Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Happy Wednesday and welcome back, everybody. I know you just saw me last night, but I'm back again tonight. It is the mid-season. We are in it. It's hot and heavy right now, so we go Tuesdays and now officially Wednesday night, seeing as I got off my duff and decided to stream. But I have a great group with me, and they're going to be with me throughout the season. So if you enjoyed the conversations that you're going to see tonight, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification icon, tell your friends, tell everybody, all right? You're getting some back-to-back. Yes, Anthony, back-to-back Brad, and it's going to be a good time. So with me, soon to be as always, my boy Bryce. How are you tonight, my friend?
I'm always good, Brad. Thanks for asking. Looking forward to doing this every Wednesday with you.
Well, every time Bryce is on, you know it's going to be good. And then on top of that, we have Cody Woodman, right? Last name's Woodman, right?
Got it.
I saw it, and I was like, I hope that's Woodman. Otherwise, he's going to think I'm an idiot. Cody Woodman from Off the Schneid. You guys saw him in the off-season with us. He came on and was a guest, and it was an amazing conversation. So he is nice enough to join us again. Make sure you guys go check out his content on YouTube. He does a lot of NFL-focused chatter, and it's amazing. He does a great job analyzing, and he's going to join us throughout the season with some fantasy analysis. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Hardest working man at Roto Heat over there. So yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to Wednesdays. Good to meet Bryce. Let's get into it. I'm excited.
Yeah, it'll be fun. All right. So tonight we are talking what to do if your team is either 2-0 or 0-2. We know, as crazy as this season's been so far, there's people at both ends of it. So with that, I want to get to first our news and notes, because we do have a couple things to talk about. So Miami's at least ruled out Tua this week with some fractured ribs. So that means it's the Jacoby Brissett show. Bryce, how does that make you feel, and what are you doing with this situation? Is this something where you're just going to wait and see? Tua hasn't been that hot so far this year. What's your gut tell you right now?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say because I'm not a big Tua believer. I don't like him as like one of my starting quarterbacks, even in a super flex league. I almost kind of just feel the same with Jacoby Brissett out there when it comes to fantasy value. Jacoby's got a little bit higher upside when it comes to rushing, especially when they get into the red zone. He finds a way of getting in the end zone. He seems like a capable backup, but it doesn't seem like Tua is going to be out for long. They're going to play it day by day. I wouldn't be surprised if he's back next week or if he sits out another couple weeks. But overall, I'm saying Brissett is pretty equal to Tua when it comes to fantasy value. If anything, I almost value him a little bit more. What do you think, Cody?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think they're pretty interchangeable. That's 100% there. But the biggest problem is going to be the offensive line, regardless of who's under center. So, they're going to have to get the ball out quickly. So I'm avoiding anyone in Miami. I think he sits out more than one game, just because it's the ribs on his throwing side, on his left side. So it's going to be tough to, extend and really drive the ball. So I think it's going to be 2 weeks. This Miami team's kind of falling apart a little bit, so we'll see what happens. But if you're in a one quarterback league, you're in a bad spot if you're starting either Tua or Jacoby. So,
yeah, and typically, if you're thinking the 12 team situation in a one QB format, there should be somebody out there you can go get that isn't Jacoby, because I would look elsewhere. Even if you're streaming, I know people, I know in some leagues, people have left the Kirk Cousins of the worlds on the waiver wire. Go get them. They're throwing the ball a ton. If Jared Goff's sitting on the waiver wire, go grab him. They're throwing the ball a bunch. He's getting a fair amount of points. I know these aren't sexy names, but they're better than Jacoby. Like, it just is what it is. Unfortunately, Miami's offense is struggling, and we got to look elsewhere for fantasy production when it comes to the quarterback.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins is like the QB5 or something right now. Like,
yeah,
don't scoop him up. If their defense is so bad that they have to try to keep up. So, don't be ashamed to be starting Kirk Cousins. I have him as a starter in one of my leagues. So
yeah,
I
just picked up Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones in one league. He's just sitting out there. He's one of those guys where especially in redraft, where people might not be as serious as like dynasty owners, where they're looking more of like how a quarterback is in real life, and they're not really associating that with his fantasy value. And guys like that have so much rushing upside, if they're on the waiver wires, I feel very comfortable starting him every week, even in a one QB.
Especially if it's 4 for a passing touchdown, 6 for rushing. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. And on the other side of things, in the AFC South, Texans placed Tyrod Taylor and Nico Collins both on IR this week. So that means Davis Mills is going to be your starter for a few weeks, probably at least 3, I would guess, probably more than that. They have other options in-house, but it sounds like they want to go with the rookie. And Brandon Cooks has been the big producer at wide receiver, but what does this do to this offense in your mind, Bryce? How are you feeling about these guys, and what's your gut tell you?
I think like myself, I can speak for most people, and we didn't expect the Texans to be any sort of good coming in this year. And we didn't really think much of them beating up on the Jaguars week 1, especially seeing how they looked in week 2. But, Tyrod Taylor actually looked pretty decent. So that kind of sucks because he had a decent amount of fantasy value. I know most people, he's probably on the waiver wire on week 1, and it's not getting picked up on week 2, but it kind of sucks to see that. But it's also interesting to see a guy like David Mills come in and see what he can do. Brandon Cook seems to be able to produce with any quarterback at this point. I've talked about it with Rick on the Sunday shows, but he's been so lucky to have great quarterbacks through his whole career. And now he got to kind of work with one that might not be considered a great passer in Tyrod Taylor, but he was still producing. So I think overall it kind of sucks for that offense and limits them because they were competing with the Browns who are a good team. So it's going to be interesting to see what David Mills does week 1.
Yeah, I watched that game actually earlier today while I was working, supposed to be working, but just to see what he kind of looked like. I thought Davis Mills looked pretty good considering all things considered. Like, he didn't get a ton of practice reps, I'm sure. Tyrod looked like he tweaked his hamstring on that touchdown run and then tried to gut it out. Just wasn't going to happen. Hamstrings are finicky. So we'll see. Obviously, he's going to miss a few weeks. I wouldn't be shocked if Davis Mills ends up starting the rest of the season. Just because you got to see what you got. Listen, the Texans are going to be a bad team. They're going to have a high first round pick next year. So you need to see what you have with Davis Mills before going into that draft. So as weak as it looks so far, Spencer Rattler just hasn't been that guy. Howell just hasn't been that guy. I don't think that there's going to be a quarterback drafted first overall. So, and then they could go ahead and trade Watson, maybe look at a team like the Giants and the Eagles, pick up 2 first-round picks, and then they're sitting there with 3 first-round selections next year, piece together that team, throw Davis Mills one more time. We'll see. I didn't think he looked that bad. It's tough. It's still going to be tough. I would say I'm excited to see him play this week, but short week. That's going to be a tough ask. So maybe the following week, we'll see what he really looks like. Like fantasy implications, really nothing there. But I don't know about that, Sully. Just sub in Canadian for another Canadian.
They're having fun in the chat. I love it.
But as far as Brandon Cooks looks, yeah, he's the only guy worth starting on the Texans offense. And yeah, he seems to be basically quarterback proof, right? He's been on how many teams, how many different quarterbacks, how many systems, and he just produces. The dude is just a stud, and I don't think anyone can say anything different. At least you shouldn't. He's a good football player.
Absolutely. And, and the thing that's going to work in their benefit is that when you looked at Davis Mills pre-draft, the stuff he did well at Stanford was quick timing releases and vertical down the field stuff. Brandon Cooks is great with all of that. If you need him to do slants, give him the ball in space quickly, let him do something, you can do that. If you need Brandon Cooks to beat somebody down the field, he can do that. I mean, so in my mind, Cooks is good. After that, it's who does Davis Mills begin to trust? So, we have 3 or 4 tight ends on this roster that they've kind of been rotating in. None of them have been producers except for Farrell Brown in week 1, and then nothing. I mean, you've not had much else. Anthony Miller should make his debut this week, so there's other pieces that there's a chance for something. I mean, Brevin Jordan's a kid they drafted that I was a big fan of that slipped in the draft for a lot of different reasons. Who does he begin to have a rapport with? Is it out of the backfield? Phillip Lindsay. I mean, there's so many different options that, this team is going to have to pass. They're going to be down. Who is going to be the guy that Davis Mills begins to trust and looks to when he has to throw the balls outside of Brandon Cooks, because everybody trusts him. He's a starter regardless. He's a great flex option if you can get him in a redraft situation. And when I'm thinking about our topic, this is a great reason to move over to it. If your team's 2-0 or 0-2, Brandon Cooks is a guy that you could target to be your flex. and help you throughout the rest of the season. So the main point I wanted to get to tonight is, what do you do if you're at the bottom or at the top? We're 2 weeks in. This is the time where I'm seeing guys begin to panic and send out trade offers, trying to either sell and rebuild in a dynasty format, or in redraft, they're just trying to figure out how to scramble to make this thing not a dumpster fire the rest of the season. So and I'll start with you, Bryce, when your team, and we'll start at the bottom, when your team is 0-2 and you're in a redraft or a season-long situation, what do you begin to try to do with your roster? Give me some examples of what you would try to do with that type of a roster.
Yeah, so, I am in a couple of leagues where I'm 0-2, but it seems like it's in leagues where I've got guys like, Zeke or Barkley or Kamara, who have been kind of inconsistent just in the first 2 weeks, but I'm not freaking out at 0-2 personally. When you do redraft, you probably got decent value in the first round. There's no guy that I can imagine you drafting in the first round that I would be freaking out about at this point in the season. I've seen a lot of fire sales on Barkley. So if I'm 0-2 and I think maybe I'm a little weak at running back and I don't own Barkley, that's going to be like one of the guys I'm going to be targeting this year. People are freaking out about Zeke the same way because Tony Pollard kind of outperformed him with less touches in that week 2 game, but Dallas is going to still give Zeke his touches. So I'm probably holding firm in any of these leagues that I'm 0-2 if I trust my roster. And then I'm going to try and get some high profile guys like that maybe haven't produced to what people are expecting them to where they drafted them.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought up Barkley, but don't panic. That's the number one.
Right.
You got at least one more week before you have to, actually make a move and really start thinking about, I need to do something to fix this team right now, or I'm just going to put a match to whatever my buy-in was. And with Barkley, I think with anyone, if you're 0-2, I think you need to start looking at playing your matchups and just trying to put together a lineup that's going to get you the most points possible. Like if you have those guys on your bench, great. If not, then start looking around. And the guy like Barkley, with the matchup that he has this week, wait till he busts out against Atlanta. Hopefully, if he doesn't, then it is what it is. But if he busts out against Atlanta, then you're going to get more value for him. So then maybe flip him when you're sitting there at 1-2, something like that. That's what I would look to do. You don't want to, and then he plays, I think, New Orleans after that. You don't want to trade a stud that didn't work out for you right before he has the juiciest matchup that he's had, all season. So that just doesn't make sense. But number one, don't panic and start just looking at matchups. Another thing I do, and I see a lot of guys don't sometimes, take advantage of every single IR spot you have. If you have 2, most leagues usually have 2 IR spots, fill it up with someone. Get Tariq Cohen's out there, Rashad Bateman. I don't know. There's countless guys out there that are banged up a little bit that will be coming back. Even Jeff Wilson, right? Get those guys in your IR. It's a free spot. It might not work out for you, but it's free. There's no reason not to, right? Take advantage of it. They might become trade pieces later. So that's how I attack it if I'm sitting there at 0-2. Luckily, I don't have any teams at 0-2.
Yeah, in redraft, all my teams are 1-1 currently. Like I have no 0-2 or 2-0 redraft teams. Dynasty, on the other hand, it's a whole nother story. I got a little bit of both, but for me, and the don't panic is the thing that everybody really needs to remember, at least for the first few weeks. 3, even week 4, I think is really a spot where you could still go, okay, I can turn this thing around. That's kind of the point of no return in my mind. So, week 3, see what happens. And there are some really good matchups. If you're the Barkley owner, Atlanta looks like a sweet matchup for you for his kind of coming out party. They've slowly brought him back into the system. They've given him, kind of a pitch count, like you hear him say about a lot of guys coming back from injury. And this is the game where they could just let him run loose potentially. And that could be huge, at this point. So in my mind, as I was thinking about what an 0-2 team needs to try to do, think about whoever's underperforming on your roster. So if you're the guy who drafted Barkley in the first or second round and he's not doing anything, don't fret about a guy like that because he's coming back from injury. If you have somebody who's underperforming on your roster that is healthy, but the team is just not in sync. So, think about your quarterback situation. Josh Allen is a QB2 right now in most redraft formats because Buffalo's just not been on the same page. Well, you have to look at the situation. Josh Allen's going to bounce back. This offense seems to have struggled a bit, but at some point you have to think they're going to hit their stride and get back on that track, I would think. So you New England fans don't want that to happen, but Buffalo is a team that, last year that offense was no joke. Well, what's different this year? Why is it not producing at the same level? Those are the questions you have to try to dig through and then decide, what do I do with these guys? If you really don't think that offense is going to get any better and this just is what it is, trade the guy. Find the guy who loves them, trade them, and get pieces that can help you try to get into playoff contention. Because really my goal is to get to the playoffs, because once you get there, anything is possible.
Yeah, don't panic until you hit whatever. In my leagues, I play in 16-team leagues mostly. You're not dead until you get that seventh loss, really, depending on how many points you get. If you're a 14-team league, it might be 5 losses, whatever it is. So you have time. If you're 0-2, do not panic. Look for value. I always say look for the high floor guys with good matchups. That if they kick in a touchdown, that's going to push them up to, a wide receiver RB1 status. So look for, again, play your matchups. If you're 0-2, play your matchups, find good matchups. If you can make trades for those, those middle round guys that you see value. I'll say this for the 2-0 talk too. Go back through your draft strategy and look at the guys that you missed on and you still see value with, and maybe you can make a 1-to-1, 2-for-1 trade for those middle round guys that you believe there's room for growth there. So that, especially this early in the season, take a look back through your draft strategy and think about guys that you can pick off.
Sully says, Josh Allen in college and every season in the NFL had a completion percentage under 60 except last year. Are we sure he is the 2020 version and not the 2019 version?
There's nothing different about that offense. Not one single thing different about that offense. They added Emmanuel Sanders. So it's interesting.
Yeah, Stephon Diggs was the X factor. I mean, that's what we all waited for, is Josh Allen to get a guy that he could use that big arm with. I think a lot of the times with especially teams that have younger players like Josh Allen, and the Bills are a young team overall. It's momentum, and they just had a lot of momentum that they gained throughout the season. And I think we just kind of wait for that to start to get traction again. I mean, they just came off a huge win, right, where Josh Allen didn't have to throw the whole game, and they won 38 or 35-0. I'm not looking too much into week 1 and 2 of his fantasy production. I'm looking at all last year, his rushing upside and things like that. Josh Allen will for sure bounce back.
Yeah, guys like that, and even Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley. Wait till minimum week 5 before you're even thinking about, making a move for those guys. And then, like I said, that's when you're in kind of panic mode where you have to make a move or else you're just burning your buy-in type of thing. You might as well take a shot and trade a Josh Allen week 5 when you're 1-4, see what happens.
So I guess the next question I have when it comes to an 0-2 team, what do you do? So, look at a guy like Alvin Kamara. Didn't really blow up week 1, had a solid high teens production, but then last week didn't really do anything of value. You probably paid a top 5 pick for him, or spent a top 5 pick, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. Do you begin to worry about a player like that who could potentially be a huge trade piece for you right now, but if you have another couple of weeks of this, may not get you the same type of return? Is that something that you start to consider, when you think about the other guys at the top there, Kamara, Saquon, probably Jonathan Taylor? These guys are all not really producing at the draft stock that you probably spent on them. Are these guys that you would consider looking at moving for some sort of package that gets you running back and something else, a wide receiver or a tight end, to help fill in some of these pieces at this point? What do you do with guys like that, Bryce?
So I'm looking more to acquire guys like that personally. Alvin Kamara is a 3-down back, and I think week 1, the defense put the Saints in such great situations to where the offense didn't really have to do much. And Kamara kind of benefited from that. He got a receiving touchdown, then average stats outside of that. And then last week, I think, is more of a wake-up call for them, where they see that this, not having Michael Thomas, not having Drew Brees, there's your answer to what's going to happen to you on a weekly basis if you don't get your best players involved. And Alvin Kamara is their best player right now on offense. Even when Michael Thomas is healthy, he's their best player on offense. So at this point, Sean Payton, he's not a bad coach. He knows what he's doing. He knows he's got to get guys like Alvin Kamara involved, whether it's the pass game or the run game to continue. So with the week 1 kind of performance and the horrible week 2 that a lot of people experience, I would almost be trying to get him right now, even if I was 0-2, and maybe send a package deal for a guy that I think could turn my team around, because Alvin Kamara is going to win you games throughout the season.
Well, so you have Kamara. Barkley hasn't been performing. Jonathan Taylor was another first-round pick most people went after. Zeke, Tony Pollard's outproducing Zeke at the moment. So there are plenty of first-round guys that probably are so far looking, I don't want to say bust, but looking like they weren't worth the first-round pick. So would you try to target all of these guys because they were first-round picks and hope that they can bring your team back, or is Kamara kind of the difference maker out of the bunch?
Yeah, I didn't get to, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't address them, but again, the same situation for them. These teams are going to get their best players involved. Jonathan Taylor had a pretty decent week 1, statistically, just didn't find the end zone. Zeke's finally found the end zone. It looks like Dallas is going to kind of week to week, week 1 they knew it was going to have to be a shootout, so they just threw it the whole game, and Zeke did a great job blocking. I know that doesn't get you any fantasy points, but they're going to have, these guys are going to get involved, and you spent that high draft pick on them, so I'd hold them. And if you didn't draft them, they're just guys that I personally think they're going to turn it around, and they're going to be worth where you drafted them.
They're tough to get. They're just tough to get because no one wants to sell low, right? Like no one wants to be the GOAT. So they're tough to get in a 1-to-1. I find you kind of like have to try to disguise who you're really after in the trade, something like that. If that makes any sense. Like I'm luckily 2-0 and have Kamara somehow. And I tried to package him for McCaffrey, giving up a bunch of depth, that sort of thing. So, I mean, again, go back to your draft strategy and look at guys that are like, if you like Jonathan Taylor and you have Zeke or vice versa, whatever it is, and then make those trades and package them up, try to get some value somewhere else as well. That's what I would look to do. But yeah, don't ever sell low. Like it's getting harder and harder to pull those trades off too, because there's so much information out there and no one wants to get fleeced. So you kind of have to disguise your trade offers and try to be sneaky about it to get somebody to pull the trigger on selling low. That makes sense.
It does. So if you're 0-2 and you're not able to get these trades to go through for these big name players, are there any guys that come to mind for you, Cody, that you're trying to target either waiver wise or kind of lesser guys on the roster that could help give you consistent production, at least keep you in the running? Is there any names that kind of popped off to you through the first 2 weeks?
I'm a massive Jamal Williams truther. Last time I was on the show, I said the same thing, and I think he's about to just pop off, and it could be against the Jets this week. I think the Broncos definitely get that win comfortably, and they could run the ball a lot. It might be a mixture of both, and it probably will be Gordon and Javonte Williams, but I think it's only a matter of time before he absolutely pops off and becomes hopefully at least a flex guy. So that's what I was saying before about getting those high floor guys that if they mix in a touchdown, then you're laughing. I would definitely look at Sony Michel with Darrell Henderson probably missing. I think it's going to be probably 2 games at least. We'll see. Cam Akers had a similar injury last year. He missed 2 games. So I feel like Sony Michel is going to get a chance, and he's definitely going to get some goal line carries. He's definitely going to chip in some touchdowns, I think. So that's a guy I look at. Even a guy like Leonard Fournette, I liked Ronald Jones quite a bit, and I still do. It's just, honestly, the offense does seem to run a little more smoothly with Fournette. And Arians likes him. I think Tom Brady likes him. So that's a guy that I look at where, again, it's a high floor. He's going to get some catches. He's going to get involved with the offense. He's getting his touches. And if he kicks you a touchdown, then he just skyrockets to being no longer a flex, but an RB1 type of thing. Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson might be missing a week or 2, something like that. It's hard to think that he doesn't have at least like a sprained MCL, something. That didn't look good at the end of the game. And Juju's a bit of a target hog even with Deontay Johnson, not to the extent Johnson, obviously, I think he is the highest floor guy on that team, followed by Juju. So that's a guy I look for. Chase Edmonds, James White. There's tons of names out there where you can find value. And like I said, find a matchup and go after your guy.
What about you, Bryce?
Yeah, he mentioned two of the names that are on the list of guys I'm kind of getting in leagues where I'm starting like maybe 2 or 3 flex options. And James White and Juju are two of the guys I like. For reasons like you said, Juju's a target hog, even with all three, him, Claypool, and Johnson on the field. The Patriots are struggling to score. Their defense holds up, so it seems like they're going to be able to keep games close, which is going to make James White always valuable through all 4 quarters, it seems like. Two guys or one other guy that I'm targeting in a lot of leagues, and I'm not bummed, but I'm bummed that he had a really good first week because I was hoping he would kind of have a dull first week because he was injured in the offseason. That way I could target him, and that's Deandre Swift. I just love the way that the Lions use him. I understand that Jamal Williams technically started both games. One was against the Packers, which I actually really expected that in the first week. He was, like I said, he was coming off injury, but he's just way more explosive. He's super valuable in the pass game. So those are just some guys that I think are going to get a lot of volume and could potentially get you a lot of points there, and like some flex options / running back twos.
I think we saw at the end of that game that Swift is going to be the end of last week. He was in there for the majority of it. And it's hard to just deny talent, right? And our running backs and Anthony Lynn offenses eat. So I definitely like Swift as well.
Yeah, for example, you were talking about like maybe cutting your losses on some of your earlier picks. And, in most redrafts, I feel like Joe Mixon was going before Swift. Swift was going in the third, Joe Mixon a lot of times mid to late second. I mean, after week 1, I immediately offered Joe Mixon for DeAndre Swift, and he accepted it.
Great trade.
I could have been more happy. And, some people have that pride where I drafted this guy this spot. I can't get rid of him for a guy that got drafted in the third. And I think that's just, you gotta trade them based on what you see. So, another thing for DeAndre Swift, I was down 1 point in the fourth quarter and they're getting beat. And I'm like, hey, there's no way they're putting the starters back in. Like, it was like, 2-3 minutes left in the game, and DeAndre Swift comes out there and catches 2 passes and wins the game. So I like him a little bit more just because of that.
Yeah, and names that I would add to him would be easier names to get. Guys like Marvin Jones from Jacksonville, who's been getting a ton of targets.
Good one.
Brandon Cooks is somebody we've already talked about, but he's somebody that people are all about trading. That can be your flex. These are the types of players that in a redraft format, when you're just trying to get to the playoffs in a 1-year situation, these guys can get you there because you can see they're getting heavy snap counts, they're getting heavily targeted. The usage is there. So, go after guys like that. James White is another perfect one just because he can do it all. And now that they have their younger Tom Brady, air quotes, they can run the offense the way they used to run it, which was perfect for James White. That's the reason that as we went into the season, as soon as Mac Jones was named the starter, I told people to pump the brakes on Damian Harris's love because, that's great. He's going to get involved, but it's going to be James White again who's going to get you the most, potential each week for fantasy production because all of them catches. So,
right.
And you're going to see that again. And I would look for teams that are using similar types of backs. Tony Pollard is a guy that probably can still be attained, who should get you a fair amount of value throughout the rest of the season. He's not going to keep up this pace, but he's playable in a pinch at the running back position. Jamal Williams from Detroit, because everybody loves DeAndre Swift. Jamal Williams is a guy that you can plug in as needed, and he will get you consistent production. It may not be the sexiest production, but it'll at least be some production if you're struggling. So, guys like that would be guys that I would absolutely tell you guys to go after and target, whether it's trading, whether it's waiver wires, so we don't know how deep your leagues are. If you're in a 12-team league, some of these guys are available on waivers. If you're in a 14 or 16 team league, you got to trade for these guys. Those are the types of guys I look for because you may not have to spend the guy you draft in the first or second or third round. Maybe you can just swap players or something of the like. Now, on the flip side of it, you're at the top of the hill. You're the king that everybody wants to take off. You're 2-0. You're rolling. Things are going well. You've had Tyler Lockett in his 240-some point games each week. And, although his history, he only really gets, 3 to 4 of those a year, and then the rest are stinkers. You're feeling good. What are you doing at that point if you're a team that's at the top of the hill, You've had some big boom games for guys that you maybe didn't expect it, but you want to make sure you keep the momentum rolling. Cody, what does your team look like? What do you do with what your roster looks like? If you have a guy like a Tyler Lockett, do you consider trying to flip him while he's the hottest to get you a couple of pieces to help solidify your run? Or what do you do?
Obviously, your draft strategy worked, and what you're doing is working. Don't blow it up. Don't change a ton. If there's a couple guys, like I'm not trading Lockett actually personally at all. With that Shane Waldron offense, he likes those quick hitters, and Russ seems to as well. Not that they didn't have rapport already with Tyler Lockett. I think, didn't he catch 100 balls last year? And now in this offense, I think it could increase. And from the first 2 weeks, obviously we're seeing it look pretty good. So I don't think I'm trading Tyler Lockett, if I'm being honest with you. A guy that I'm thinking about potentially trading is Debo Samuel. It's only a matter of time before Ayuk gets fully healthy and gets more involved in the offense. George Kittle hasn't really been around. So I look at a guy like Debo Samuel, and I love Debo Samuel. I do think he's the best wide receiver on that team. I do, but I just don't think he can keep producing to quite the clip that he has been. So that might be a guy that I look at moving. And yeah, just I wouldn't make any wholesale changes. Your draft strategy worked. You're in a good spot. You should have depth. If, like I said, with my 2-0 team, if you can trade some of that depth and get a stud, then go ahead. I had Kamara and one or two other guys trying to get Christian McCaffrey because I drafted well. So now I can afford that. But there's no need to over tinker. There's definitely no need to over tinker. I have some buddies that definitely do that a little bit too much. And just, yeah, what you did worked. So start your studs and keep on winning.
Looks like Ricky agrees with you. Lockett to the moon. I do have shares of Lockett as well, and I'm not really trading them at this point. But he's one of those guys that you're not going to get the same production you got in week 1 and 2 throughout the season. I mean, you'll get probably 4 to 8 catches a game for sure, but sometimes that 4 to 8 catches will only get you 66 yards and no touchdowns. You know, I mean, so you're probably still getting double digits because of if it's a PPR format, but you may not get the same boom type plays you've been getting. Bryce, what do you do in situations like this with your team at the top of the mountain?
Yeah, I mean, I want to ask you guys, I don't own any shares of Tyler Lockett, unfortunately. I've been big on Cooper Kupp this offseason, so that's been very beneficial. He's number one right now in fantasy production. But would you trade a guy like Tyler Lockett right now for someone like Calvin Ridley? Would you make that trade and redraft?
Again, when I was on here last time, I've always been a bit of a fader of Calvin Ridley. Not that I don't like him, not that I think he's a bad player or anything like that, but I don't know. I just don't like Calvin Ridley, if I'm being honest. I don't think he's as good as other people think. Plus that quarterback situation, plus the offensive line, plus the coach, plus the new coaching staff. I probably don't. If you want to, let's say you're 0-2 and you have Tyler Lockett, you could make a move like that where you're trying to, improve and shoot for the moon type of thing. I don't, but that's
Brad,
me.
would you make that trade?
I like Cal. It is because I really like Calvin Ridley, the route runner on the opposite side of Julio, not having to worry about teams focusing on him. So far, we've watched him. He's gotten a lot of targets. I think he has 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there targets so far. But this offense is struggling, and he's going to get better. I think he's going to bounce back, and you're going to see better production at times throughout the season. But he's going to have this up and down where I'm not confident he has the same type of output. So I don't know that unless I'm getting something good in the deal for Lockett, I'm not trading Lockett in a redraft format for just Calvin Ridley straight up. It's got to be something more. If I'm hurting at running back, some running back depth, a nice tight end, an issue that I'm going to bring up in our Q&A portion here in a few is what to do at tight end because, you've got teams like Dallas that doesn't know who to pick as their starting tight end and they just target them all and it ruins everything. So if I can get a solid tight end to really help solidify my tight end with Ridley and maybe even a little something else. I don't know.
Right.
You're
not selling them unless it's a package deal, pretty much.
Yeah. I wouldn't do one for one.
Yeah, I own a lot of Calvin Ridley, and I watch that just because I have a lot of fantasy assets on the Falcons, and it's completely their O-line's fault. Matt Ryan's got no time back there, which causes errant throws. I mean, Calvin Ridley's open a lot. Even last year when Julio was hurt, he was sustaining running or wide receiver one numbers. But if I was, the Tyler Lockett owner and someone offered me Calvin Ridley, I don't think I would take it either, just because of that issue. It doesn't look like that thing's going to get fixed. So, I'm going to agree with Cody when, if you're 2-0, there's not really any players right now that have boomed 2 weeks in a row that I think I would be parting with. It just seems like all the players that have consistently put up numbers, for 2 weeks, first ones come up to mind are obviously Lockett and like Cooper Kupp. Those are just guys I'm probably not trading because I think they have top 5 value potentially even at the end of the year. So
Right.
Who has the higher floor right now between Lockett and Ridley?
Probably
Lockett. Yeah.
Who has the higher ceiling between Lockett and Ridley?
Probably Lockett.
Probably Lockett. I mean, the only thing I like about the Ridley on the Falcons is that I see them passing for 4 quarters every single week, where I don't necessarily think that's always the case for the Seahawks. I think they can get to the fourth quarter and ground and pound for 12 minutes, to where I don't think the Falcons will ever be in that situation.
Yeah. The great thing about Lockett, though, is he could get all of his fantasy production on, 3 catches.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one catch, 3 catch. I mean, a very small amount. So he could have your startable game done by halftime, and then
absolutely,
if they do run, sure, but it's tough. I mean, that's a gamble. That's a risk you take. But that, I mean, you're gonna have those weeks. I mean, even look, Tyreek Hill, he had that week this week. He almost hurt me in one league, but he didn't. So, that's
killed me in one league.
I got lucky.
Another guy I don't own. I don't own any Tyreek Hill, unfortunately.
Only in Dynasty do I have Tyreek Hill, and I think I got him before he blew up. I think I've had him for a while. All right, so that's your 2-0. That's your 0-2, and now we get to the fun stuff. We get to the Q&A portion. So make sure anybody who's been watching, drop your comments and questions in there. We will answer them now. We will talk through it, and you will hear the brain trust of us figure out what it is that you need to do with whatever your problem is. So first we start with DJ Vic. He says, Brandon Cooks or Mike Davis, flex spot, full PPR. Thanks, guys. So think about that for a second. Cody, who are you going with?
Cooks. Don't need to think for half a second even.
Bryce, the wheels are turning.
At this point, Brandon Cooks should just be demanded. Like, you shouldn't even have to ask for. His respect has been earned, is what I'm trying to say. Like, he produces every year. It seems like almost every week. At this point, I would feel comfortable starting him as a wide receiver too. So flex, I'm loving it. Yeah.
Another guy that can have your starting week, wrapped up by halftime, right there. One catch.
in a drive. Yeah.
And that's the tough thing, is that I would want to pick a running back if that running back wasn't on the Falcons with this struggling offense. Because Mike Davis, I think he's had at least 20 touches between running and receiving the first 2 weeks, and he's just not giving you any production. I mean, there's just not much to be excited about there, because Cordero Patterson is leading this team, So I would go Cooks as well.
He runs so hard, and he does not look bad, but it's like he's getting first contact behind the line of scrimmage every single time, and every time Cordero Patterson runs the ball, it's like the defense doesn't think that he's able to receive a handoff, and there's just like the gates are open. So.
And he can do a little more than Davis, and especially obviously in the passing game, like extensions of the run, swings and stuff like that, screens, all that kind of stuff, and just get the ball in his hands and let him run straight down the field. So, and Mike Davis can't really do that. They're just not built. I said this in my episode I made about the Falcons. They're just not built to be a running team. They're going to have to stay the course with throw the ball 50 times a game.
Right. And you're not concerned this week that they're facing the top-ranked Carolina Panthers defense?
I am, but they're going to be losing that game, and they're going to have to throw the ball. And Cooks, had 9 catches last week. So against the Browns, which is a pretty decent defense, in my opinion. They've had a bad game that game. But again, like Bryce said, and I said earlier, at this point in Cooks' career, he's shown that he's kind of matchup proof. He can play. He's just a solid football player. It sucks that he's on probably the worst team in the NFL and maybe the worst quarterback in the NFL, but volume.
Absolutely. There you go. DJ Vic, hopefully that helps you, and good luck this week. Our boy Joss, as always, glad to see you in the chat, my friend. Sutton, hip, D-hop, ribs, more of rest days or more concern? Bryce.
I'm not worried about D-hop. I watched a lot of that Broncos game, and Sutton looked like he was in pain every single time he caught the ball. But the dude is a monster. I'm not too concerned unless I see that he's ruled out. At this point on Wednesday night, there's usually a decently clear picture that the player is playing Sunday. So we'll really know for sure kind of tomorrow. But I'm not too concerned about that.
Yeah, I'm starting DeAndre Hopkins without question. If he's on the field, I'm starting him. Especially with like Kyler Murray's having an MVP season, and right now it looks like he's gonna be the front runner as long as he keeps doing what he's doing, and there's no reason to think he won't. So I'm absolutely starting Nuke no matter what. If he's on the field, I'm playing him. Sutton, yeah, that's one of those guys that might be more of a matchup play, and you want to make sure he's healthy as well. So I wouldn't just start Sutton because he's the starting wide receiver one. I like Tim Patrick there quite a bit too. But yeah, Nuke, start him. Start your studs.
Always. And the tough thing with Sutton is he's still coming back from a season-long injury last year. Played week 1, was on a pitch count, blew up last week, looked really good, but like you said, Bryce, he was looking hurt too. So that my concern this week for him is do they try to be careful with those amount of play time and the snaps he gets, because they have Tim Patrick, who always produces. Like every time the guy's on the field, I mean, it feels like in the last 8 or 10 games, the guy's had a touchdown every time he's been in the game. So he's a guy that, one that we probably should have mentioned in our 0-2, 2-0 talk is you could target him and he could be a nice depth piece that you might get some good starting value out of, because Judy's out for, better part of half the year at least, I would guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with that, in this matchup coming up, they could just run the ball, 45 times with the two-headed backfield there, and you're only going to see 20 passing plays out of Teddy Two Gloves. So I avoid Sutton this week, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I would be concerned, but I would make sure I watch. If he's wide receiver one on the team, and you're in a pinch, you could play him, but I would be careful. All right, Hector, I got Fuller, Osborne, and Bryan Edwards on waivers. Need to play 2. Which ones? So Will Fuller's coming back from Miami with Brissett. I think this is Fuller's first game, right? He hasn't played at all this year, I don't think.
He sat out last week for personal reasons.
Yeah.
So this is his first game action of the season. KJ Osborne of the Vikings is, the third option at wide receiver, but he's producing very nicely so far. And Bryan Edwards gets targeted a lot, but typically they get a flag when he gets the ball, so I don't know what the deal is there. Who are you starting of these two, Bryce?
Fuller's the best athlete out of all three. I just don't know how he's going to get utilized, especially not having practice with Jacoby Brissett probably at all. Osborne's been really good the first 2 weeks. I think Bryan Edwards is probably my easier start out of the three, and then I'm probably gonna go Fuller just because I think he's just the best athlete. I think he has potential to be really good. Their best wide receiver on their team, in front of Devontae Parker. Technically, I mean, they're all three of their wide receivers are going to be good if they stay healthy with Fuller, Waddle, and Parker, and I think Fuller just ends up being the best one out of the three. So I'm going to go Fuller and Edwards.
If you're 0-2, Fuller. If you're any better, 1-1, 2-0, I would probably go with Edwards and Osborne. I think that's going to be an absolute shootout with Seattle. Seattle's going to put points on the board. They're going to have to throw the ball like Minnesota's done the first 2 weeks. They're going to have to do that again. So I'm honestly probably going Osborne. And then if I'm 0-2, go with Fuller. And if I'm any better, Edwards. With Fuller, it just worries me, like we were talking before, that offensive line is so horrible. Jacoby's going to have to hold on to the ball for, a little bit of time for Fuller to get down the field. Is he going to have that time? He has not yet, and there's no reason to believe that he will. Plus, he hasn't played yet, and he's dealing with, I don't know, something that sounds like it's pretty bad for his family. So, thoughts go to Will Fuller, and it's hard to say where his head's at. Like that's a tough. He's clearly, there's something serious going on with his family. It sounds like, from everything I could get out of Twitter. But
sure. So, does Edwards being the fourth option on the Raiders passing game, behind Waller, Renfro, Ruggs, does that concern you at all when trying to pick him to play? Because he's probably only getting, 2, 3, 4 targets in a game potentially, maybe a little more.
Yeah, if you got to start 2 of those 3 guys, you're in a tough spot. kind of regardless. Right. So I mean, the way that it looks like Derek Carr wants to get him the ball, and he's physically gifted. He's a big guy. If he can catch you a touchdown, and then there you go, you're happy with your start, sort of thing. Mind you, Fuller could too, obviously. So I don't know. I guess it depends on your risk tolerance.
I think no matter where my team's at position-wise, I think I want to go Osborne and Fuller, and it's more of the upside play. So if Fuller doesn't score me a lot, shame on me. But Edwards, as much as I love the player, being the fourth option on this passing offense kind of worries me, because if they get to a situation where they're trying to focus on running the ball, then, the first and second options are about the only useful options in the passing game, So for me, I want to go with what I think is probably more of a floor situation. Right now, we know Minnesota's targeting Osborne because they have to pass a ton. Fuller should get targeted a bunch because they're going to need to pass a ton. Edwards probably could get targeted, So in my mind, it's like, okay, so where's the value proposition? Edwards of these 3 is my favorite of the receivers, but he's also in the worst spot of the 3. And Sully agrees. Give me Fuller and Osborne. Fuller, best player, and Osborne has the best QB of the group. So that's a tough situation, but hopefully that works out for you, Hector. Hopefully starting 2 of those, and if you really like Edwards, throw them in. They're probably going to pass a bunch, I would guess.
Jacobs is likely out, so we'll see.
Go.
Keep an eye on Jacobs. Keep a very close eye on Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, they said he was very questionable. Was it today or yesterday? So
yeah.
All right, Douglas McBride, welcome. Hopefully we can help you out here. Let's see what we got. Should I start Antonio Gibson or Tyson Williams? So Gibson is hitting the buzzsaw of the Buffalo Bills defense. Williams is hitting the fruit smoothie of the Lions defense. So Bryce, who are you starting out of those 2?
I think I'm starting Gibson here. I watched the Ravens and Chiefs game, and it seemed like they're starting to slowly kind of work in those veteran backs that they signed in. Well, mostly just Latavius Murray. And, he found the end zone week 1. So you could tell that, he didn't play the first game of the year because of probably reps in practice, especially how they run that option. You got to have reps to be able to have that go smoothly. And just by week 2, we saw Latavius Murray get a little bit more involved. Antonio Gibson's a stud. He's got to get utilized a little more, especially since he can be used in the pass game. Even though J.D. McKissick is their third down back, I'm still going to start Gibson just because of how much more PPR upside he has over Williams, and I'm not too sure that he's going to see the volume or the amount of snaps he did week 1 with the emergence of Latavius Murray starting to be more involved in that offense.
Well, and the interesting thing about Gibson and McKissick is they both have the same amount of targets in the passing game, but McKissick has, and they both have 5 catches, but McKissick has 5 for 83, where Gibson has 5 for 20 or something.
Right.
So there's a significant difference in what they can do and the position they put them in as receivers out of the backfield. Cody, what are you doing? Who are you starting here?
I mean, hate to say it, Brad, but I think the Lions get routed in that game. But I'm probably starting Antonio Gibson as well. I think that there's going to be a game coming up shortly. There's a couple guys that are like this. I think Gibson is one this week where they're due factor, and he's just going to bust off. Right. And I do think that could happen this week. Lat Murray, I feel like is going to get more and more touches as the season goes on. And if and when that game gets away from the Lions, it might be a good opportunity to get Devontae Freeman, maybe Lev Bell, whoever ends up, being that backup type of running back, get them some reps, get them involved in the offense, that sort of a thing. And yeah, running quarterbacks aren't typically dumping off a ton to running backs. So, Lamar's just going to take off himself. I'd probably go Antonio Gibson here as well.
So it doesn't concern you that Buffalo right now is only allowing about 3.6 yards per attempt. So far through 2 weeks, they've given up 41 attempts, or they've had 41 attempts for 146 yards and no touchdowns against them.
The offensive line does worry me in Washington, that's for sure. But, because the offensive line for the Pittsburgh in week 1, pretty bad. And they dink and dump over there in Pittsburgh. Anyways, last week is a write-off because the game was gone by, the time Jacoby Brissett got in the game. So, I'm not really looking at that sample size yet. 2 weeks, especially the way those games went, I'm not super concerned. Unless this game gets away from the football team, which I don't see it completely getting away from them, then that small of a sample size in what I saw in those games, not super concerned about that.
I would agree. I'm throwing devil's advocate. I'm throwing pickles against the window, see what sticks. So I'm going Gibson as well, purely because I expect him to get somewhere around at least 20 touches, and he'll get some value out of those 20 touches. Tyson should get some play and should get some decent value, but you have so many other options with Lamar and 78 other running backs that are veterans that have played. So that Tyson is as appealing as he looks. And when he's on the field, I think he does a really good job. I think he does a good job running between the tackles. His vision appears to be better than I expected for a rookie running back. I watch him look for where the hole's opening up and go. Like, he doesn't look like he's overthinking it. He just hits the hole and goes. But, Gibson, you drafted Gibson in the first or second round for a reason. Play your studs.
Yeah.
All right, so Caleb, welcome back, man. We had you on last night. It was good to see you. Who should I look for flipping Ridley? Allen, Lamb.
I don't lock it.
Yeah, right. Who should I look for flipping Ridley? Allen or Lamb. So if you're flipping Ridley, can you get any of those guys? I don't know. That'll be a tough one. I think you have to package if you're going after Keenan Allen or CeeDee Lamb.
I think you can maybe get Keenan Allen or Lamb, but guys like Kupp and Lockett that I would like to get for Ridley, you might have to package something and again kind of disguise it. A scenario I was kind of thinking was like if you have Rob Gronkowski and like Ridley. Obviously this won't work because of the teams, but Gronk and Ridley, or will work. Sorry, Gronk and Ridley for like Kupp and Kyle Pitts in a redraft. This is obviously redraft show, something like that, like where you're kind of disguising it. And I think Pitts can bust off. So something like that. Obviously, I'm sure you don't have Gronk, but I think you probably could go straight up Allen or Lamb for Ridley. Lockett and Kupp might be a little more difficult to get your hands on. DK Metcalf, guy I'd look at.
What about you, Bryce?
Personally, I'm not trading Calvin Ridley for Keenan Allen. I think Ridley's still got more value than him personally. But CeeDee Lamb at this point, I think it'd be very difficult to get CeeDee Lamb off the owner's hands for Calvin Ridley just based on the first 2 weeks. CeeDee Lamb is already like a target hog. He's got, I think after week 2 now, he's got more targets than Amari Cooper. Even though Amari Cooper seems to be the better wide receiver, it seems like CeeDee Lamb might be Dak's favorite target. And his just ability to make plays after the catch is something you can't ignore. So if I was trading Calvin Ridley, I would definitely accept if someone offered me CeeDee Lamb for him. I don't know if it would be hard. I kind of value him very similar, but not for Keenan Allen. I think you could get a package deal, in my opinion, for like Keenan Allen, maybe whether it's a tight end if you need some help there.
Yeah, I'd sub in DK Metcalf for Allen there. I'd go with Lamb and DK would be the two guys I'd look for Ridley if you want to trade them.
Yeah, that's those guys are all even in my opinion as well.
Yeah, if I'm flipping Ridley, I'm looking at who are the guys that are just getting a crazy amount of targets that are under the radar. Mike Williams from the Chargers, he appears to be the top target of Justin Herbert and is playing very well. Looks healthy for the first time in a while. Sterling Shepard from the Giants looks healthy. He's getting a ton of targets. But if I'm going after these guys, I want a package for Ridley.
Right.
So I'm saying, give me Mike Williams, give me a tight end, or give me,
you can maybe get both those guys you just said for
right.
Ridley.
Right. So I'm targeting a couple guys that are getting a ton of targets because both of those guys are currently getting out targeting Ridley and Allen. I mean, I think they even are out targeting Lamb too, if I check.
Lamb got 15 week 1 and I think 9 week 2.
So Shepard and Williams are out producing him, but they're all getting a ton of targets. So,
right.
Lamb would be a guy I want to get, and Keenan Allen still has a ton of value. Like that guy's still going to get you 1,000+ yards. He's had a little bit of a slower start to the season than Mike Williams, but it'll even itself out as time goes on. But so those are the types of guys I would go for, Caleb. Hopefully, if you trade Ridley, you can get some sort of package that helps strengthen your roster for a playoff push.
Yeah, if you're sitting there 0-2 with Ridley, which is relatively possible, look at 2 of those guys, maybe throw Marvin Jones in there, something like that. Yeah, get yourself a nice little package for some depth.
Yep. And then Andrews must have joined us a little late. The Brandon Cooks show ended a little bit ago, but we are all in agreement that Cooks is a guy that you want to have in your lineup because he's pretty much matchup proof and pretty much quarterback proof at this point. So definitely feel good about Cooks. Even though he's facing a tough matchup, he's going to get peppered with targets.
You don't want to have Cooks on your bench with 30 points.
No, not at all. All right, Timothy Chan, welcome to the show. Would y'all trade away Miles Sanders, Mike Evans, Rondale Moore, and Allen Robinson for Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and Jamar Chase in a full PPR? I really want Allen Robinson.
I don't like having Eckler and Keenan Allen. I'm not a big fan of running back, wide receiver with 2 guys that you're going to start 100% of the time. So I probably don't. I'd flip out one of those 2 guys, see what other options he has. I think Evans is ready to bust off a little bit. I have never liked Miles Sanders ever, so I avoid Miles Sanders. Allen Robinson's got, he's kind of due as well. And with Justin Fields, I think you'd want to wait and see what you have there. Away. So you have Allen Robinson. I think you'd want to see what he looks like with Justin Fields. Finally, he's starting. It's 2 weeks too late, but here we are. And Rondale Moore, he's another guy that's one play away from making the start, making you happy about starting him.
That's a tough one.
So
I love Eckler, the Eckler piece of that trade, and Jamar Chase, who's getting targeted a bunch. Like those 2, I really would love to try to get on my roster, but I don't want to get rid of Allen Robinson. Like Allen Robinson is going to be a top 10, 12 type receiver. I don't care who your quarterback is. Eventually you break out. I probably wouldn't do the deal either, though. I would probably wait and try to swap out Keenan Allen. I want Eckler. I want Chase. But can you sub Keenan Allen for some other receiver that maybe,
a little
has
better.
Similar? Yeah.
Eckler over Sanders, no question. Chase over maybe Evans at this point. And then Allen Robinson, that's a lot of value there. I don't think you do that deal personally.
Yeah, and Timothy, I would encourage you. I'm just looking for it now, and figures I didn't have it ready and up. I would encourage you to jump in our Discord chat and post your team and the team you're trying to trade with, and let us help you formulate a trade to respond. I just posted the Discord link in there for anybody who's watching. If you're not part of our Discord community, jump in there. It's free. We have a ton of different channels throughout fantasy football, as well as other stuff that's just outside, other sports, other random chatter. It's a great way to connect with our community and ask questions, get your start sits, get all that stuff in there, trade questions, lineup questions. We're here to help. I would definitely not take that trade, but I would definitely let's work on building you something else to offer. I don't mind trading the 4 guys you have, but I would want something different in return.
There should be something there. There should be something there to work out. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Thank you, Caleb. We appreciate you stopping by. All right. So I got one question before we move on to, it's already 10:30. See, that's how quickly the time flies. So I want to ask a personal start sit question. I've got 4 tight ends. It's not a tight end premium league, but I have 4 tight ends and I have to figure out who I'm starting, and I don't want to start any of them. So I have Dalton Schultz, Blake Jarwin, Evan Ingram, and Dan Arnold. And I feel like I'm going to start Dan Arnold because he's got a crappy matchup against Houston. and because I can't trust any of the Cowboys tight ends right now to produce consistent production. So of those four, who are you guys going to start if you had to start one of those four? And I've tried to work out trades for guys like Logan Thomas and others. They're not biting unless I'm trading things I don't want to trade away.
Do you need a ceiling play or a floor play?
Yeah, it sucks that they play on Thursday too.
Yes.
And then Monday for the Cowboys.
This roster's pretty solid, so I don't have to have a guy that blows up. I mean, I just need some good, solid production. Even if I can get somewhere in the 8 to 10 point range, I'd be fine. I'm just not sure any of them are going to do that this week.
I'd probably go Dalton Schultz.
Dalton Schultz. He's who I've been starting the first 2 weeks, and 1 week he did fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sully, I did wind up going out on the waiver wire and getting him. Nobody else picked him up, which doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's 26, but he's just been so.
I like Darnold a lot. I really do. I think that he's super underrated, and he did take a step forward last week, and it is a terrible matchup, so you can't go wrong. And I guess in all honesty, it's going to set you up for the rest of your week. You're going to know what you got to do after that. If he lays an egg, then you might change some other things that you're doing. If he blows up, then you're obviously laughing either way, and I don't think he'll change anything. But
yeah,
it helps
the matchup. Yeah, the matchup I have is a little softer, and I am about to start Tyreek against Detroit, so I know I'm going to have at least one really nice, productive game from somebody. Bryce, who would you start of those four?
Probably Arnold. Personally, it sucks because both those Cowboys tight ends, they'd be sweet if the other one wasn't there. They'd be ideal to start every week. I think Blake Jarwin's he would have been great last year if he didn't get hurt. And, Evan Ingram's a freak athlete that just hasn't produced even close to his potential, just like O.J. Howard in Tampa. So I think you start Arnold and you hope you watch the Giants game and Evan Ingram does decent and you're not too mad that you didn't start him, but you see that now you have somebody that you can feel comfortable starting the rest of the year.
All right. So that's it, folks. 10:30. We're in the books. We appreciate you guys for hanging out with us. I know this is the first Wednesday back, but we're going to be back every week for the rest of the season. And we're going to have fun with it. So hopefully you guys will continue to join us, posing your questions, having fun in the comments with us. We do love hanging out with you guys. Hopefully this week treats you well, and tomorrow night's action gets you some good fantasy points and sets you up for a weekend of success. Bryce, thank you. Cody, thank you. Chat, thank you guys. We'll see you later.
Also, right there, playlist. Hit it. Watch the videos.